Hello subscribers and non-subscribers, and welcome back to ChäoS. I do want to go and mention real quick that this is going to be a regular roughly 30-minute long episode because I don't actually have the time to go and record and render out a full 1 hour long episode since I'm recording this much later than I would normally do. So yeah, as I said, this is going to be a roughly 30-minute long episode, sort of the regular length. But I am going to go ahead and essentially extend the letting you guys vote as to whether or not you would prefer a 1 hour long episode or 2 30-minute long episodes until June 1st, which is the next Wednesday that I would be uploading this. Because, well, this gets uploaded on a weekly basis so long as I'm able to actually upload it or record it every week. So essentially you guys have until whenever I get around to recording this on June 1st. Basically, you can just say that you have until 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on June 1st to vote as to whether or not you would prefer a 1 hour long episode or 2 30-minute long episodes. Whichever one people would prefer the most of is what I'll go ahead and render, or I'll record and render out for the 31st. The main reason why I'm asking is simply because either way I'd be recording the same length of content. It's just that some people may prefer to have 1 hour videos split into 2 parts, while other people may prefer to just have it in one video. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get started. Start my timer for 30 minutes. Go ahead and load up the save. It was no more than my own delusion, but it terrified me. For it was entirely possible that Yua had actually looked up my cell phone number somewhere and called me. I wanted to avoid listening to the voice message, but because I'd simulated the worst possible outcome through my delusions, I should be able to put up with anything as long as it only involved listening. Shaking off my melancholy, I made the message play back. Scooping out my surroundings again and again to verify that the demon girl wasn't there, I put the phone to my ear. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Just wanted to check and make sure that my microphone was being recorded. Because it's been a while since I've used Bandicam to record my microphone, so wasn't sure if I maybe somehow screwed everything up and caused it to get deselected. But nope, it's fine. Yeah, good question. What is that? Rather than anyone's voice, what I heard was a deeply familiar melody. I had the sense that it was ringing out from a slight distance. Perhaps the person on the other end of the line had been near a traffic light. Doesn't sound like something you'd hear at a traffic light, but hey, I've never been to Japan, so who the hell knows? This song was often played at pedestrian crosswalks in order to let people with visual disabilities know when the light turned green. By the way, it was a children's song called Let Me Pass. Though a lot of people knew the melody, far fewer knew the lyrics. On a side note, I know them because I learned them in middle school. Well, but it wasn't as though I remembered them perfectly. I'm not going to try and sing it. You guys can do it yourself if you really want to. Though I'm curious how the melody at all matches up with the actual lyrics. That sounds more like an ambulance now. It sounded like coming home is beep boop beep boop. It wasn't very auspicious, what with how it reminded me of an ambulance. Meh, it must have been a coincidence, but it was creepy all the same. I get the feeling it wasn't a coincidence. And sounds like a very old modem. The instant after the traffic signal's melody got cut off, there came a massively high-volume sound akin to that of a buzzer. It was so loud, I didn't waste a second in taking the phone away from my ear. When I gingerly returned the phone to my ear, the message had already finished playing. What had it been? At the very end, I might have faintly heard a roar like the ground rumbling. That buzzer was something completely separate from the melody of the traffic light. For it to have such tremendous volume, all I could assume was that the phone's receiver had been deliberately placed close to the source of the sound. My heart began to race when I thought that. Had I done anything to earn someone's dislike? Who had made this call to me anyway? I could return the call using the number displayed on my phone, but I wouldn't be able to bring myself to redial a prank caller. In the end, my only available choice was to leave it be. Besides, my current situation was far worse than a prank call like this. I put the phone away in my pocket and left school, carefully observing what lay around me all the while. Oh, and it would appear we were so close to the end of that section that I could have gone ahead and let it continued so that we would start up in the new sort of chapter. Oh well. There's no real way to tell when you're nearing the end, in all honesty, so... Nishijo Takumi's alma mater, 2nd Kitazawa Elementary School, was about 5 minutes walking distance from a private railway station. Thinking that he'd like to speak with the teacher who had been responsible for Nishijo Takumi during elementary school, Ban Yasuji attempted to contact him via phone, but was told that, sadly, he had passed away. Ban, resorting to speaking instead with the one who had answered the phone, the head teacher, Kamio, went to the school together with his partner. As it was a Saturday, the school gates were closed. The two detectives, Ban and Sua, stopped there and looked over at the school building. An extraordinarily eye-catching, brilliant-colored mural was painted on the white outer wall. I don't see what you're talking about, but maybe they'll show it to us. Without any knowledge of art or aesthetics, Ban had no idea what it signified, but the way the spiral-shaped painting changed to 7 different colors as it went from top to bottom reminded him of a rainbow. While Ban gazed at the mural and fanned himself with his handheld fan, his partner, Sua, pressed the intercom button near the school gates. Ban abruptly looked away. He had the feeling that someone was watching him. It was a particularly clingy and unpleasant gaze. He tried striking a casual pose, one that was dandy, cool, refined. And phone had to start ringing to let me know to feed my dog, but he can wait till I finish recording this episode, because it's not that much long. Well, actually it is, but he'll be getting fed at his normal time anyway, so it's fine. I'm confused as to why there's always a side door to the... Like, it seems like they decide to build a wall around the entire school, but for some reason they say, hey, we're going to have a front gate, and we're going to have a side gate for whatever reason. Van stopped posing, sighed once, and began to walk. They were quick to locate the staff room. The side door soon led to the school's rear entrance hallway, and getting to the staff room only required turning down one corridor. Naturally, there were no children present in the building, and to the two detectives, I was about to say objectives, I don't know why, it felt chillier than when they'd been outside, although this could have been an illusion created by the slick linoleum floor. There were 3 teachers in the staff room. One of them rose and bowed his head upon seeing the detectives enter. He was Kamio, with a mild smile and mostly white hair swept over with a side part. Ben and Sua showed their police ideas to him almost simultaneously, then entered the topic at hand soon after a brief greetings. After a few brief greetings. It was Sua's role to ask him questions. Sua nodded, taking out his notebook and readying himself to jot things down. Yes, I am curious as well to exactly what this illness is. In recent times, all schools had begun responding with this "don't rock the boat" attitude. They wouldn't cooperate fully when it came to anything that might result in a lawsuit from a parent or guardian. It made doing one's job as a policeman much harder. Kamio gave a small side-to-side shake of his head in response to Ban's questions. Ban, too, had felt a faint recollection of that accident. After the accident, glancing at the TV had shown him the mass media swarming day after day around the house of the one male child who hadn't been involved. For some reason, as Kamio repeated himself, he placed a strong emphasis on the word accident. It was a custom of mine to chat with Grima before starting Ensu. We usually didn't chat about anything important. We'd exchange information about interesting threads on @channel, go on and on about Arrow stuff, recommend new comics to each other, or discuss the previous day's anime. Casual stuff like that. Surprisingly, we didn't talk about Ensu much. Why, you ask? Because we talked it to death afterward while we played Ensu. Okay, is it going to show anything or am I going to have to click? Okay, it wanted me to click. Has there been some kind of weird prank going on around lately? Sauce, please. Nah, I just heard about it from someone I know. But I don't know if it's really going around or not. Seems like they play weird sounds into your cell phone's voicemail. Like a Moe voice saying Arrow stuff to you? LOL. Haha, what Arrow are you thinking of? On the contrary, wouldn't you want them to hurry up and do that to you? Well then, Whose eyes are those? As usual, Grim had to go and use those words. He'd made my mood go sour in an instant. And plus, his Japanese was strange. Were those words so fascinating that they merited being shoehorned in, even when they didn't fit? At least, they didn't fascinate me one bit, far from it. They made me go cold. But no point in fighting with him about it, not before I finished asking about the prank. I simply had to put up with him. Like the sound of a freak otaku fapping, LOL. That's foul. To answer you seriously, it's Let Me Pass. Let Me Pass, that's a song, right? The one they play at crosswalks. Yeah. And then in the middle, it suddenly switches to a sound like a buzzer. Apparently, it's pretty high decibel. Ever heard of a prank like that? Seems like the kind of thing that'd be a fad at channel, doesn't it? The mysterious buzzer-like noise that had been recorded in my voicemail yesterday. I didn't know whose handiwork it was, and something about it concerned me, so I had to go at asking if Grim had heard of it. If it were purely a crank call, all I'd have to do from here on out was ignore it. Huh? Grim wasn't reacting. Wonder why. Oi. You drift off? Still no reaction. It was rare for Grim to fall asleep like this. In fact, it hadn't happened once in the past. But if he was asleep, there was no helping it. We'd meet later in Ensu anyway, and I could raise the subject again then. The moment I thought that, and started to rise from my seat, kept you waiting. I was searching at channel for stuff about your prank. Oh, so that's what it had been. But in other words, it meant that even the super knowledgeable Grim hadn't known about this prank. But no one was talking about it anywhere. Forget at channel, it isn't anywhere online. That suggested the prankster had done it because they harbored some kind of personal grudge against me. That or you'd be the first person in a prank. I mean, that's another possibility, is it not? The identity of the caller concerned me after all, but I wasn't gutsy enough to call back. But since I knew the phone number, I could use someone as a scapegoat and make them call for me. Nanami and Masumi seemed like the best choices. No, Masumi was out, because he might have been brainwashed by the demon girl. And Nanami was my little sister, so I wouldn't have any trouble asking her to do it. She'd probably get pissed at me afterward, but it wouldn't be my problem. Nothing wrong with making her experience societal hardship firsthand every once in a while. I thanked Grim, promised to meet with him in Ensu a couple hours later, and closed the chat. Right then, my stomach gurgled. Man, I was hungry. Did I have a cup ramen stocked up somewhere? I went hunting for it, but couldn't spot it anywhere. I reluctantly decided to go get some at a convenience store. The sun had already set. If possible, I'd have preferred to avoid walking around after dark, because lately all it had given me were nasty memories. I unthinkingly hastened my pace, hurrying down the road to the store. Today is Saturday, so I would have expected to cross paths with any number of pedestrians, but so far I hadn't encountered a single one. The stores that were always open had been closed. It was a tad strange. Maybe I was under the wrong impression, like thinking it was 7 p.m. when in actuality it was 2 a.m. Okay, maybe not. Even so, it was far too quiet. For the most part, I couldn't hear any miscellaneous city noises. The town's ambience was different than usual. I arrived at the convenience store in the Shinsen Plaza. The plaza was in front of the train station, but there wasn't a single person here either. I was gradually starting to get scared. The sudden absence of something I had taken for granted, that alone was enough to give me the sense that I'd fallen into another world. Under ordinary circumstances, I skirted away from meeting with and talking to people, but right now, I just wanted to see someone's face. I ran inside the convenience store. There absolutely had to be a clerk in here, so I thought as I surveyed the store's interior. No one was there. I don't remember what we did last time. I'm going to go red. No customers. Not even a cashier. This wasn't possible. The cashier had to be doing something in the back of the store. If I brought some goods up to the register, they'd soon re-emerge. That was why, in the end, I took my time picking a boxed lunch while pretending to check out some manga magazines. I set my boxed lunch down by the register. No one came out, after all. Somehow, I had a bad feeling about this. It wasn't normal at all. Maybe I had stumbled into some truly unthinkable scene. Standing in front of the register, I cast a careless look outside the store. Beyond the automatic glass doors lay the road, upon which not a single person was walking. I saw a human form in the shadows of the apartment complexes sandwiching the street. The form soon hid away. Even so, I had seen it distinctly. The figure's hand had been holding up something like a long black pipe. It resembled... Wasn't it a sniper rifle? This meant they were the riot police, or alternatively a SWAT team. I hadn't seen any shoppers or cashiers because the police had sealed off the area. But for what purpose? Having thought that far, I gave myself a start. I swiftly looked around the inside of the store, then concealed myself in the shadows of a shelf. What if? There was currently a standoff taking place right now, in this very store. The criminal, having taken the cashier hostage, could have holed up in the back room. And that criminal might be the true new-gen perpetrator. What a development. I crouched in place and cradled my head. Why had I ended up coming to such a dangerous place? More importantly, the police were the police. If you shut down the area, you should have stopped me before I went in the store. Was there no way for me to go outside? If I stayed here, I'd end up as a hostage too. Luckily, I hadn't bumped into the criminal yet. If he was holding up in the back room, it might be best to flee now. I was so frightened, my knees quaked. It took a tremendous effort merely to stand up. Even so, I hovered low and stealthily made for the automatic door. It began with the kind of cliched declaration that you wouldn't even hear on TV detective shows anymore. From outside the store, a policeman began roaring through an amplifier. Startled, I hid deeper in the shadows of the shelving. What endlessly stereotypical way to call him out. Don't you have a negotiator or something? Wow, 30 seconds isn't much time to really do anything, if you ask me. So short. 30 seconds, he said. What? Leaping into action, do you mean to expose the hostages to danger? Do that in contemporary Japan, and the public and the media will bash you like there's no tomorrow. What the hell were the police thinking? I stifled my breathing and curled up into a ball. My heart hammered away incredibly fast. It felt like it would tear itself to pieces. If the police broke their way in by force, this convenience store would surely become a battlefield. I'd get caught up in it without having any say in the matter, and might die from being hit by a stray bullet. Anything but that. I couldn't see the criminal's movements. The store was silent. I became irritated. Why was the criminal acting like such a freaking idiot? Hurry up and surrender, please. If you don't, I'll get tangled up in it. I tentatively peeked out from behind the shelf and looked outside once more. What I saw shocked me. Several SWAT sharpshooters, their sniper rifles at the ready, were camped out in an area easily visible from here. I hurriedly whipped my head back in. The police meant to shoot the criminal to death. Would they be able to get away with that kind of thing in Japan? I couldn't believe this. This has to be a lie. Give me a freaking break. Or, give me a fucking break. As I looked around and around the area, I caught a glimpse of my hand. For some reason, my hand was gripping a long knife. On top of that, the blade was glistening red. This was blood. I grew bewildered. Since when had I had a knife? No, rather, where had I gotten this knife from? From close by came the sound of someone groaning. A clerk was lying there. A bleary-looking man, probably a college student, his hands were bound behind him and his mouth was sealed with packing tape. The clerk stared at me. His eyes were dyed the color of terror. Why are you looking at me? Don't look at me like that. It almost makes you seem like you're looking at a criminal. A criminal? Was I the criminal? No, it wasn't me. I hadn't done anything. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. Got about 4.5 minutes left on my timer. You know what? I'll go ahead and let this continue until the timer goes off. Or until we actually enter in the next chapter, as I just referred to them. There's no such thing as policemen like that. Anyway, what was up with the whole yelling fire bit? It's not as if this were a Sengoku-era battle. Several minutes passed while I fantasized. There was no indication that a cashier would appear. I very much wanted to believe that the clerk had dozed off, so I tried waiting another 5 minutes. But in that time, neither a cashier nor any other customers appeared. I didn't even hear any sounds. At last, I became frightened and returned the boxed lunch to its original shelf before leaving. I went to a railroad crossing located close beside the station. From here, I had a good view of the Shinsen Station platform. I'd presumed that here, if nowhere else, couldn't possibly be devoid of people. But no one was there, after all. I waited for the train to come in. Once it came, there would have to be passengers getting off. Even if no one left, I'd see them riding in the train as it passed before me. I waited for 10 minutes and still no train came. I tried to make myself think there had been a fatal accident, one that had messed up the train schedules, but, as before, no customers whatsoever emerged onto the platform. Having come to this point, I finally realized the gravity of the situation. Strange. This was bizarre. Oh yeah, I should try going to Shibuya Station. People would definitely be there, no doubt about it. 24 hours a day, it didn't matter when, people were always, without fail, in the Shibuya Station Plaza. I broke into a run without a moment's hesitation. I ran as if my life depended on it. I didn't want to stop, even when my breath became short. It might have been the first time I'd run with all my might since I was born. As I ran, I prayed for this to be some kind of tasteless nightmare. But it wasn't a dream. My heart and lungs hurt so badly it felt like they were shredding. It was a pain that transcended the dimension of dreams. I was surprised at the extreme fervor of my own breathing. It hurt no matter how much air I sucked in. As I ran down Dugan Hill, I finally caught sight of the 107 building. By now, my legs had gone unsteady. My body felt astoundingly heavy. Even so, I forced my feet to keep moving forward. I could no longer afford to keep an eye on my surroundings. On the contrary, the entirety of my consciousness was focused on the pedestrian scramble that symbolized Shibuya. A little longer. Just a little longer. Once I passed the 107, it'd be right there. The largest in Japan. It was the place in Japan where the largest number of people came swarming together all at once, moving simultaneously with changing off the traffic signals, which was why I had to get to the scramble. The scramble. Empty. The Shibuya Station Plaza, which you could survey from the Y-shaped road in front of 107. A soundless world. A dead-seeming world. This space that was supposed to be flooded with sound was now governed by silence. All I could hear was my own ragged breathing. In the middle of the wide street, I fell heavily to my knees. I couldn't walk any farther than this. Shock had drained all the strength from my body. Right, left, front, back, everywhere. No one was there. Even though 7 on a Saturday night was the time when Shibuya ought to be the most crowded of all. What was happening? It was a lie. This had to be a lie. I closed my eyes and nursed my head. This was a dream. An illusion. There is no way this could be reality. Yes, I had thought I wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life by myself. I didn't want anyone to meddle with me, and I didn't want to get involved in anything. But I hadn't wished for a world without anyone else in it. If no one was there, who would pay for my life expenses, or for my living expenses? If no one was there, who would make convenience store box lunches for me to eat? If no one was there, who would play Ensu with me? If no one was there... A sound. I heard a sound. It wasn't me. Someone else made it. Someone was here. Someone other than me was close by here. I felt like I'd reached salvation. As I thought, it had coincidentally happened to appear like no one was here. In truth, not one person had disappeared. I hadn't been left behind in the world all alone. I was so relieved I almost cried. I set my gaze in the direction the sound had come from. The one there was a boy in a wheelchair. A short distance away from me, though still, in the middle of the crossing, he sat quietly in place. At the moment, I couldn't tell quite how old he was, going by the size of his body. He could only have been an elementary school student. Because his hat was pulled down low over his eyes, I couldn't see much of his expression. Except... Oh. I wasn't expecting him to say anything else. Okay, but that's all he had to say, was, "We meet at last." The boy's voice sounded particularly clear to me. Feeling as though he'd whispered right into my ear, I unintentionally whirled around. But of course, there was no one behind me. Though he was younger than me, I found myself speaking formally. Despite the fact that his voice sounded young, there was nothing childish about its ambience. Message? I didn't know what he was talking about. The boy moved his wheelchair a tiny bit forward, perhaps because it was old. Simply going forward made it let out rusty noises. I was confused. Why had this boy murmured, "Whose eyes are those?" here and now? What in the world was he? I rubbed my eyes, wiping away my tears. Thanks to that, I was finally able to take a clear look at the boy's face. This boy wasn't even a boy. His skin was wrinkled as an old man's. His cheeks were gaunt. His eye sockets were sunken to a sickly extent. His eyes were clouded. He had no eyebrows. And his body was as small as a child's. For a second, I forgot to breathe. My head rocked with an impact akin to that of being struck by a hammer. The ground shook. No, my body was tilting. I splayed a hand on the asphalt, holding myself up. Just now, what had he said? Shogun. He was Shogun? I raised my head and watched as Shogun, who had already turned his back to me, left. His wheelchair creaked as it slowly receded into the distance. I thought about chasing after him and demanding all kinds of answers from him. But I didn't think of telling him. How dare you get me involved, and hitting him. That sort of thing didn't agree with me. My head had started aching. The area around my temples throbbed sharply. I curled into the fetal position and endured the pain. A single noise began to spread throughout the soundless world. Whose voice was this? Don't look at me. The voice that had been a noise gradually transmuted into a real voice. Someone had placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Fighting with my headache, I raised my gaze. The demon girl, Rimi, was crouching over me, peering into my face. Clear eyes filled with life. Eyes that looked wholeheartedly at me. Only at me. Again, this girl had appeared so suddenly. She slipped her hand around my side and tried to make me stand up. I shrieked and shook her off. Coming back to myself, I looked around. As before, I was in the middle of the road, but it wasn't empty anymore. There were people 360 degrees around me, in every direction, and they all walked whichever way they pleased without showing any interest in me. Looking as if she were about to cry, Rimi extended a hand toward me. When I yelled, the throbbing in my head changed to the direct pain. Even so, intent and uncaring, I crawled to open more distance between me and Rimi.
ベースに帰れば僕にはリソ。
An abrupt shock shot through my cheek. It stung and began to go hot. Remy had slapped me. And she was going to kill me for sure now. On all fours, I scrambled this way and that across the ground, but Remy grabbed my hand in a flash. She pulled me toward her with a strength I found to be unbelievable, coming from a girl. She embraced me. Her soft form enveloped me tenderly. She was very warm. She smelled even ever so faintly of sweat. Her smooth, shining hair tickled the end of my nose. With the wind out of my sails, my whole body threatened to go limp. There was a slight catch to her voice. I didn't know whether or not she was crying. I was lost. She didn't intend to kill me? Why was she helping me? That hallucination from earlier, where all the people in Shibuya had vanished. It wasn't something she'd made me see? When I sensed such kind-hearted warmth, when she hugged me without the least bit of malice. It had the effect of shaking everything I'd believed up until now. It made me think about Sakihata Rimi. Wasn't a demon at all. Was I foolish? Was she pulling the wool over my eyes? Except one thing alone had become certain. With Rimi holding me, I felt incredibly relieved. I didn't know what to call this peculiar sensation. Upon letting go of me, Rimi clasped my face in her hands and looked at me steadily again. Her eyes were a little reddish. Somehow I ended up nodding. Right now, we were standing all alone in the middle of the crossing that everyone had vacated. The vast numbers of people waiting on the sidewalk for the light to change were paying close attention to us. I heard laughing voices coming from here and there. Myriad cars pointed their headlights at us and began blaring their horns. Rimi took a firm grip on my hand and began running toward the sidewalk. I followed in her wake as she pulled me. As the honking horns scattered across us, we made it to the sidewalk. Rimi let out a relieved breath and pulled up short. She was still holding my hand. That by itself made my heart grow calmer and calmer. I wanted to give myself over to this serenity. I wanted to stay like this forever. Rimi turned back in my direction. She smiled as though she were tremendously happy. I didn't think that expression of hers was a lie or an act. And I know my timer already went off, and I know I said I was going to end this once the timer went off or we reached the end of the chapter, whichever happened first. But this chapter is actually sort of pulling me in a little bit, so I think we're just going to go until the end of the chapter. Or until we end up hitting an hour long. Whichever happens first. She smiled as though she were tremendously happy. I didn't think that expression of hers was a lie or an act. But because up until now, I had been utterly hostile toward her. Because I had thought she was a demon. If I let her win me over, I felt like I'd cease being myself. She quickly dropped my hand. I turned my back to Rimi as she began talking cheerfully. I walked off, widening my way through the hordes of people. Probably for the best. Her voice followed me from behind, but I shook my head to refuse her. The cheerfulness had vanished from Rimi's voice. I felt awful, since she'd done so much to help me, so... I just barely managed to squeeze out those 2 words. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this episode. Longer than I had originally anticipated. I think it's closer to 40 minutes now, but that's fine with me. It was actually a fairly interesting chapter, in my opinion, so I don't have any problems with it being a little longer than I had originally planned for it to be. But again, leave a comment letting me know if you would prefer to have a 1 hour long episode on June 1st, or if you would prefer 2 30-minute long videos. Leave a comment for that. Just leave a comment letting me know which of the 2 you prefer. I don't really care either way personally. Rendering 1 hour long video has a little bit less downtime between renders because it's only 1 render, while with the 2 30-minute long renders, there ends up being some downtime because once one finishes rendering, I'm not the kind of person who goes straight to rendering something else immediately after normally. I end up sometimes just letting it sit there while I do other things. So, personally, I'm indifferent for the most part. A little bit prefer 1 hour long video in that scenario, but again, I don't have any particular preference. But as I said, that's going to be... Oh, I think I've said it. I may not have. Either way, that's going to be it for this episode. As always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys next time. But until then, goodbye and farewell.